a particular dish or a single dish is not able to represent the nation. The pandemic taught us to look at food very differently. So we're a pretty food obsessed society. Food shares an intricate relationship with political economy, caste, class, gender. Food is being seen as a way, as a lens to understand Indian society. All the networking and the conversations happen over tea and coffee because I think food is very personal.
What if I told you that your favorite meal says much about your identity just as much as your passport does? That a plate of biryani, a bowl of shutki, or even a slice of cake can tell stories of caste, migration, memory, politics, and gender, and even social media. Well, today's guest has spent years exploring exactly that. Joining us on Books and Banter is Dr. Rituparna Patgiri, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the IIT Guwahati, whose book delves into fascinating intersections of food, culture, gender, media, and everyday life in contemporary India. She is the co-editor of Food, Culture and Society in India, Social, Political, Economic and Cultural Perspectives, a remarkable collection that reminds us that food isn't what we eat, it is who we are, where we come from, and sometimes even what we believe. Welcome to Books and Banter, Rituparna. Just to break the ice, how would you say that, if India had to be explained with just one dish, what would you choose and why?
First of all, let me thank you, Portia, for having me. I think the kind of work that you do, it resonates very closely with me because I'm also someone who does public sociology, and basically this initiative of yours and the work that you and your colleagues are doing, it really, resonates with me, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much. It means a lot and is very motivating.
Yeah, now to answer your question, I think India is one of the very few countries in the world which food scholars have also categorized as diverse in ways where a particular dish or a single dish is not able to represent the nation in ways in which we can think of many other countries.
Right.
So, if I have to basically make a wild guess, I would think about maybe something like khichdi, primarily because it has a mixture of rice and lentils, and it is a combination which is eaten in almost every part of the India, if not all, and it has healing properties, again very closely associated with how we think about the food and the body. But beyond that, I fail to think about any other dish.
Even the combination of khichdi, which is rice and lentils, is known in different names and in prepared in so many ways across the country.
Yes.
That speaks itself. It reflects the culture. I mean, how diverse it is.
Yes, and that's why I hesitated even, when I was saying khichdi, because I know that there are so many names of khichdi and so many ways in which it is cooked. In certain cultures, it is prasad. In certain cultures, it is food that heals the body.
Absolutely.
And there are communities which would mix meat and eggs with khichdi. So it has diverse forms, and like you rightly say, it's something which then takes on very different forms in different regional locales.
True. If there is one Indian dish that deserves global fame, but is still, flies under the radar, what would it be?
I won't say one Indian dish, but let me think about cuisine from India's northeast region, a region that I belong to. And I feel that some of the food that the Naga communities make, or the Manipuri communities make, and I'm talking about different tribal communities.
Absolutely.
The cuisine is absolutely world class. And similar cuisine from, let's say, nations like South Korea and Japan are hailed globally. In fact, sociologists have gone on to talk about the culinary capitalism associated with these cuisines. But because of geopolitical ignorance and also negligence, India's northeast remains out of the cuisine palette. And I think some of those dishes and some of those ways in which pork especially and even vegetables are cooked, they deserve much more attention and, also probably highlighting.
Now that you mention, I'll just share a quick thing. I have visited both Korea and Nagaland, and while you were saying this, it just struck me that yes, there is a lot of similarity when it comes to, in one platter, something spicy and something bland comes together, which is definitely a commonality. But right, like you rightly said, the Korean food is more of a global hype,
Yes.
whereas this is well known of, or lesser known of about the Northeast food. So yeah, absolutely. It although it's a similar zone globally, but
Yeah.
one place has got a higher kind of a space.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the branding, the
Sure.
migration, and of course, geopolitical context as well.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, so most of the ingredients, like you said, are also similar in both contexts. There's a lot of interesting ways in which fermentation plays a role too. But while the fermented food available in Korea is globally recognized, in Northeast, that process of fermentation itself becomes a way to also marginalize many communities.
Absolutely. So, what inspired you to put a book together on food? And was there any particular moment you would say that you realized that food was something much more than what was served on a plate?
So, this response takes me back a little to
Sure.
around 2012-ish. And I remember one evening I had baked something and guests were over. So, we had served them the thing that I baked. I don't exactly remember what it is. And one of the comments I received is that, oh, you will be very well liked in your, sasural because you cook well. And that made me think that my cooking interest was getting connected intricately to how I would be received, or rather well liked or not, in my in-laws place.
Yeah.
Which didn't exist because first of all I was 22 years old, nowhere near thinking about marriage, but that was the idea of food and gender. That inspired me to work on food for my MPhil. And I wanted to work on food, which was also a little discouraged by mostly, other sociology scholars, because food is still a niche area in the discipline, and it actually has taken off now much more than it did when I was beginning with my MPhil.
Especially as an academic theme, I don't think food is it's hardly touched.
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure that, you have also interviewed many scholars, but probably not many on food, right?
You are my first.
Yes, so that often happens. And that motivated me to work on my MPhil. And then when my MPhil sort of finished, I really enjoyed working on different perspectives, theoretical frameworks, etc. And I started thinking of food as a window to understand the society. So this book came out after my PhD, and during my PhD I worked on a different topic, and as luck would have it, COVID played a role. I was waiting for a year to submit because things overall pushed online, and there was a lockdown, etc. So in that period I went back to my MPhil thesis and I put this book proposal together. By then I think food had assumed much more importance, because again the pandemic taught us to look at food very differently.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It became more of survival, and you had to choose what you had to eat in a very different way. The parameters were different.
Yeah. So I think that was the moment when I pitched the book proposal, and luckily Berghan got back with a very positive response. And since then I think, I've been working on food a lot more because I also felt more connected to the topic. And I think this book was a result of that.
Wonderful. Your title highlights three very important subjects: food, culture, and society. Which of these three surprised you the most during your research work for this book?
Very interesting question. I think food.
Food.
Yes.
Okay.
Because as a sociology student, I was more or less familiar with culture and society dominating our lives. But with food, I had not expected that each and everything can be traced back to the meals that we eat and the meals that we consume. I'll give an example, and this is relatable to so many adults now, because we are now in charge of thinking about our 3 meals, right? And I never thought that that would be one of the toughest jobs that you have to do throughout your day. And I think that's really, really surprised me, because this was labor and, a task that everybody takes for granted, including me. But yes, that surprised
True,
me.
some time back, maybe a couple of years ago, I visited a friend and she was newly married, and I saw them, both of them are great cooks. But both of them struggled deciding on what should we eat today. And I haven't struggled what to eat today, because I eat everything. So I go by what's my mood today, more of that, but I stay alone. So it's not just a challenge for one person. I think the fact that people, especially in Indian society, when they live together, to manage everyone's palate and to bring up a dish is not an easy task. You're right. I mean, it's actually a pretty difficult thing throughout the day to think, okay, what do we eat next?
Also, we're a pretty food obsessed society. So our breakfast ends and then we immediately start thinking we'll have this for lunch. I also stay alone, and I like it when I have to just think about myself. But when there's another person, you have to plan a lot. And even if you're alone, you'll have to plan, because let's say you have an early morning start, so that night you need to do something about your breakfast.
Sure.
Yes. So I think this was very surprising to me, that food consumes so much time of our lives.
I guess that is why they say food is survival. So, one would say that edited volumes are like potluck dinners in many ways. So, everyone brings something different. So, what would you say was your biggest challenge in bringing together, so many diverse voices in your book?
The first challenge was to make everyone commit to deadlines. We academics are notorious with deadlines, and the second biggest challenge was actually collating all of the chapters. Now, let me mention that this is probably one of the first books which brings together so many diverse voices in the Indian context in an edited volume.
Right.
And my conscious intent was actually to capture young voices. So most of the scholars are also people who are early career researchers and scholars, and therefore I think the handholding and the guidance that I was providing along with my co-editor, that was also something which was very new for me, because this was also my first book.
Right.
But because I had by then completed my PhD and I was teaching, I did have that patience to run through the chapters at a level that was necessary. So the challenge was twofold in that way, the deadlines and then bringing together so many diverse voices, especially by people who probably had just started with academic writing rather than having already established their foundations.
Right.
Yeah.
Your book argues that food is much more than nutrition. It is a window into understanding caste, identity, migration, gender, memory, and even political power. Why do you think the food has emerged as such a powerful analytical lens in sociology, and what does it reveal about Indian society that other social indicators often miss?
So, one of the things that has happened in Indian sociology is that there hasn't been that concerted effort to collate or conceptualize food as a separate domain. That is not to say that there haven't been writings on food or sociology of food. There have been, because food shares an intricate relationship with political economy, caste, class, gender. But these writings have had a sporadic nature, because we don't have a paper called Sociology of Food in the syllabi until and unless things began to change with what we see in recent times, that we see the course being introduced in multiple universities.
Right.
So what we also see is now that food is being seen as a way, as a lens to understand Indian society. So that is very new conceptually and theoretically. The second is, I think, when we use food as an indicator, like you asked, we see a lot of transformations in the political economy, in market forces, as well as digital transformations.
Right.
So, for instance, AI is in the news a lot in the conversations. There could be wonderful papers and even dissertations written on how AI is reshaping the food world. And this could be not just at the consumption level, but also at the production level.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's the economy, why not?
Yes. So I think that is something which food has managed to now capture, because there is an increasing realization that it needs to be taught as a subdomain, as a subdiscipline, and also the interdisciplinary connections that food offers. So if you're a food studies scholar, you can also study media, you can study culture, you can study, politics. And I think this combination is something which is very interesting.
That is absolutely a fascinating thing that I've learned today. It can indeed actually interconnect so many industries.
Yes. In fact, very interesting. I started this course on food and culture in contemporary society at IIT Guwahati after joining, and it's an elective that I offer to the MA in development studies and liberal arts students. So initially the murmur was that how this course benefits students of policy, because they were wondering, oh, what is going to happen. But then they realized food is at the heart of policies like nutrition, agriculture, industry, etc. And it was an elective, but it had the highest number of students, and I was also pleasantly surprised. So I think that way in which we think about food as an indicator, that has changed, and I think it helps us understand society in a very different way.
Now that you say, I'm just, I happen to think that, there are moments where I have also subconsciously realized that food is so intricate to our thinking. I have worked with the government sector for several years, and when there is a delegation coming, when there is depending on their background or their ethnicity or nationality for that matter, accordingly the food and the hosting and the hospitality becomes a very important thing. Something basic example, the G20 summit that took place here in India in 2023 when we were presiding it. The food that the government organized, which had to be proper Indian food from all parts of India, which was served to the rest of the world, that was a very important way of communicating culture to the rest of the world. And even I think in the services, whether it's a military services, I think there is an entire session about how you serve the food and how you eat the food, which nobody would have thought is important in military if you just study military as is. So, I mean, it is definitely a very important indicator of the way the society works.
This institution makes me think about how food is so integral to almost all social institutions, be it the military, like you say, the state, obviously, or prisons, or hospitals, or universities, right? I think all of that just doesn't get covered or thought about in the ways that it should be. But when we think about these institutions, food is very integral.
Yeah.
Think about the conferences and the relationship with food. All the networking and the conversations happen over tea and coffee.
I think people have started calling those meetings related to food names. I mean, wine and dine.
Yes.
All of that. I remember there used to be a gathering called Emerging Voices. It was just about wine and cheese and networking. But it makes so much more sense when you say it's like, food is involved. Whether it brings a crowd or whichever way it works.
Yes.
We often hear you are what you eat. But after editing this book, do you think we eat also determines how society sees us?
Oh, absolutely. For instance, if I'm out at a dinner and I start eating biryani with my hands, I will be perceived in a very different way from the way in which if I eat with a spoon and fork, that I would be perceived. I think the way that we present ourselves with food becomes very important in making different kinds of social imaginations. There was so much about Zohran Mamdani eating with his hands, if you remember, during the political campaign. Right? And it came to represent his Asian identity and the way that people perceived how he was Asian or not. And in many ways, there are connections between how you eat with gender also. So I often give this example to my students that you sit at a KFC outlet and notice how the boys eat versus how the girls eat. So the girls are very neat when they're eating the chicken bones, whereas the boys can be a bit messy because that is allowed or permissible by society. So I think how we eat it also plays a very important role.
Coming to how we eat, I think one part of upbringing, I think, is very important about the vast knowledge on cutlery and culinary. I remember as a young officer in my within 1 year of service, I had seen that I was presented in front of a foreign delegation with 7 kind of plates and bowls with 7 kinds of cutlery, and I had no idea where to begin from because nobody's trained me about that.
And it could get so intimidating,
up
right?
to napkin and spoon, fork, knife is fine, but 7 plates, 7 bowls, I didn't know where to start from. And I remember my a colleague who was slightly senior in age, he indicated to me by saying that always start from the end, not from the middle. That was like a huge revelation for me that okay, you start from the side, not from the thing that's kept in front of you. So I think surrounding food also, there is a lot of allied concepts which one needs to understand just with food. Again, I'm sure if I was maybe brought up in a military home, maybe I would have had some idea as to how to go about that. But my parents were civil servants, and I had no understanding of where to begin from. So again, society plays a very important as to how you also go about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, he talks about the relationship between taste and social origin.
Right.
And I think I've related a lot to his work. It's a book called Distinction. And he's looking at how your taste is inculcated from where you come, which is why food is what you eat, right? And again, someone who grows up knowing how to use the knife and the fork, they will be able to manage eating in a 5-star restaurant in a very different way from someone who has not grown up like that.
Right.
So I think who you are, that really plays a role in how your taste is governed, which is why you didn't know how to eat, a 7 plate meal because you were not trained in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I think that would be true for many of us.
I think even the new generation, the Gen Z people also wouldn't have any idea about these things.
Absolutely.
They could be modern in so many ways, but these are things that come from a different sector altogether, which people are not exposed to.
Yes, yes.
So, why would you say that conversations around food in India become so emotional and sometimes even political?
Because I think food is very personal. For most of us, it is basically something that we think about a lot. It's personally connected to our bodies and our minds.
Right.
And what we eat and what we don't mostly is not guided only by nutrition, but also by our social and cultural constructs. I think that plays such a tremendous role in making food political in the Indian context. And which is why I think food has been at the center of so many political debates, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't see that happen in a Western society. I've spent a lot of time now also thinking and researching about food habits in the, West. And in several visits of mine, I noticed that when people eat, it is a part of their lives. I cannot deny that. But it is not something which is the core. For us, I think it is at the core, and therefore the personal becomes very, very political.
Right.
Yeah.
So having written this book, which chapter would you say that completely changed about one Indian cuisine that you thought of?
Okay, very tough question, but I would have to maybe think about Asif's chapter on Bihari Muslim cuisine. Okay. Reason being that he brings in a very interesting argument that talks about how Bihari cuisine is much more than the litti choka or the mustard fish, which I was otherwise familiar with. He's connecting the Bihari Muslim cuisine with ideas of also negligence and marginalization of the community.
Absolutely.
And I was also very enthralled to read about the kebabs and the specialities coming from that region, because generally when we think about these Mughlai delicacies, the mind goes to either Lucknow or Hyderabad. So that I think was very interesting and new to me.
The volume, your book, brings together perspectives from sociology, anthropology, media studies, and cultural studies. Where do you see the field of food studies in India heading over the next decade? And what are some of the key research gaps that young scholars should be exploring?
I think food has a great future in the Indian context, and I see the future of food heading towards more interdisciplinary engagements as
Right.
well as rich academic contributions, because young people are very interested in food now. However, what I would urge them to sort of do is also work towards theory building, because that is something where we as people from the global south can contribute real, work. And a lot of young people, they want to work on food and digital. It's but natural because their lives are shaped by digital technologies.
Absolutely.
Yes, but they don't look at the ways in which it could be theoretically grounded. So I think just doing the empirical bits is not enough. It makes your work interesting, but it's not taken seriously, intellectually, or rigorously.
Right.
So if you want to even do policy work and not just academia, you will have to look at the existing literature. You'll have to place your work in that context. So this is one thing that I would really want young people to do. But the future looks promising, especially because, like I said, the interdisciplinary engagements are rich. Academically, we have papers on food now in colleges and universities, which was not a thing earlier. And this is a development in the Indian context in the last 6-7 years, right? Which is very, very new. So yes, I think it's a promising future.
Great. I think that would that's like a very good takeaway for our the generation that's coming up, because it's important for them to understand that digital is great, but that is not it. There is much more to it, and there is a reason why people without digital survive this far. So yeah, so we'll have a quick rapid fire round with you.
Okay.
And you can answer in one word or in one sentence. Sweet or spicy?
Spicy.
Street food or fine dining?
Street food.
Biryani or khichdi?
Biryani.
Homemade meal or a restaurant experience?
Homemade meal any day.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Mango pickle or lemon pickle?
Lemon pickle.
Breakfast for dinner?
Breakfast for dinner.
For dinner.
Yes.
One Indian state with the best food?
Assam. I'm biased.
I kind of expected that, but I'm so happy you said it. One dish everyone should try before they die?
Oh, the Assamese Maso Tenga.
If your book had a flavor, what would it taste like?
I think it would taste tangy, because it's a combination of, good and...
A lot of flavors.
Yes, vibrant.
So, as a rounding of questions, if your listeners take away just one lesson from food culture and society in India, what would you hope they never look at the same way again when they sit for their next meal?
Don't take the labor that people put into bringing the plate to you for granted. Be it through farming, through cooking, through shopping, through the cutting of the vegetables. Everything is very laborious. So hopefully readers will think about it and not take that labor for granted.
I think that is beautifully put. I mean, nothing could have had a better closure. Thank you so much, Rituparna, for doing this with us.
Thank you so much.